Hello everyone and welcome to Thursday. A few days ago I got something cool in the mail and it was this. EON's GCHD adapter, which allows you to play GameCube games in HD. Kind of. What it is, it's an adapter that plugs into the digital AV port of a Model 1 GameCube and allows you to output progressive scan 480p over HDMI. And that is really, really exciting. Now before we get into it and I start showing you comparisons, we'll open this thing up and see how HDMI compares to composite. I think it's important to note that I am not sponsored in any way for doing this video. EON has not paid me, EON has not even supplied the GameCube adapter itself. These retail for about $150, but I managed to snag one on sale for $100. Let's get started. So if you're not too familiar with the GameCube and what resolutions it can output, we should probably go over that first. So this is the back of a Model 1 GameCube. Now, all GameCubes are going to have this port. This is the analog AV port that allows you to hook up things like composite, that's red, yellow, white, or S-Video. But Model 1 GameCubes also have this, the digital AV output. And this is going to be what gives us our magical 480p. The reason why Model 1 GameCubes have the port and future models don't is because when the GameCube originally launched, Nintendo was selling component cables. If you're not familiar, a component is a better visual quality than composite. But they didn't sell very well, possibly because they were only selling in the online store, so Nintendo discontinued the cables and also, on future models of GameCube, discontinued the port as well. Now since that time, those cables have become extremely rare and extremely valuable. We're talking like $200 to $300. And the reason is, with those cables in a Model 1 GameCube, you could get the best picture possible out of a GameCube. And if you don't have access to either of those things, it hasn't been possible until now. It probably doesn't have to be said, but I absolutely adore this packaging. There's a little tape on the side, but otherwise it lifted right up. And inside we've got an operations manual. Okie dokie. And what looks to be some sort of, I don't know, maybe limited warranty thing. And then, of course, the device itself. So this little thing is it. This is the adapter that is going to enable 480p progressive scan on the GameCube. And for a size comparison, this is a normal sized GameCube controller, so it's very, very tiny. So the adapter just goes right into the back and it fits in both plugs. And as you can see, the HDMI port is on the right side of the adapter. It's worth noting that since the last clip, I spent about 10 minutes trying to figure out why this thing wasn't coming on. I really thought that I had a defective unit. Turns out that you really, really, really have to push this thing in. I mean, like, so hard you feel like you're going to break the GameCube. But when you push it in really hard, it makes a very loud, audible click. And after that, sure enough, it started working. So now we can continue the video. So the game I decided to test is Smash Bros. Melee, since there's going to be a lot of people that would want something like this just for that. By default, the system boots in interlaced mode, so what we need to do is hold the B button while we start the GameCube. So I'm going to hold down B, turn on the GameCube, and it'll ask, do you want to enable progressive scan display? And we hit, yeah! And it'll change. You can see the TV changed to 480p, and this the little menu that was up here is actually on the EON itself. The EON can actually bring up a display where you can enable scan lines and things like that as well, which is pretty cool. You just have to connect any remote control, and you can go through the options. So I gotta admit, right off the bat, the intro movie looks pretty dang good. Especially because right before this I actually loaded up the game in composite, which is how most of us played Smash Bros. Melee back in the day. And I mean, it's a pretty night and day difference. You know, a lot of people describe the change from interlaced to progressive as wiping off the Vaseline, and that's a pretty good way of putting it. Just playing around with it a little bit, there's no lag. In terms of, you know, input from the controller, everything seems to function, you know, just as if you were playing on a CRT. If there is any input lag, I gotta say I certainly do not notice it. I decided to go into training mode with Ness so I could zoom the camera up close and then do a really good comparison between composite and HDMI. And, you know, I think the results probably speak for themselves. I mean, that being said, this video is a 4K video, so both results are being, you know, dramatically upscaled. But I think you can still see a pretty huge difference. I gotta admit, I'm very impressed with the final product, but comparing just Melee would almost be a travesty since there's so many gems on the GameCube. So let's do a few other comparisons. So overall, I have to say that I'm really impressed with the device. It works as advertised. It gives you 480p progressive scan through HDMI, and that is super, super cool. That being said, I do have a few complaints about the device. First up, having to jam it that hard into the GameCube is wild. Like, I thought that my unit was broken, and it turns out I hadn't pushed it in far enough. That's not a thing that happens with normal electronics, and that is a little worrisome. The next thing is the price. I think $150 is kind of crazy. And the reason it's kind of crazy is the build quality. The build quality on this thing, it's sturdy, it's fine, but it's not $150 fine. It's plastic. And I feel like for $150, you should be getting something that's metal, that feels like, you know, it feels like it's worth $150. So those are my hang-ups. Obviously, this is marketed towards enthusiasts, clearly. If you, at the beginning of this video, are like, $150 sounds insane to make your GameCube look better, then you are not the target audience for this product. I think $150 is crazy. If you're going to get it, I would try and get it on sale. I got it for $100. I think that's about the top of what I would pay for it. If you can get it for that, and you are that enthusiast level that you want the product, then go for it. Otherwise, I've got some good news for you. You can do most of the same thing here if you just buy a Wii. The early model Wiis actually will play GameCube games, and the component cables for those things are super cheap. In fact, it's wild that you could buy a Wii and the component cables for half the price of the adapter for the GameCube. Now, is it true that the component through the Wii would not look quite as good as the GameCube? True. But also, it probably would be so close that you wouldn't really be able to tell that much. So if you're not at the enthusiast level, you're not interested in buying this thing, but you would like your GameCube games to look better, play them on a Wii. Use a component cable for the Wii, and you'll get a very similar result. They even sell HDMI adapters for the Wii on Amazon. These things are very, very cheap, and that might be just what you need. Now, the only downside for using something like the Wii is that you won't have access to like the Game Boy player. If you want to experience Game Boy Advance games, you know, on the big screen, pixel perfect, then you will have to have something like the EON GCHD. But if you don't have to do that, the Wii is probably your best bet. If you don't have a Wii and you just need to be able to play your GameCube games on your modern television, and you don't mind if they look a little fuzzy, you can just get a composite to HDMI adapter box on Amazon. They're like $20 to $30. But if you are an enthusiast, this product does work. And it's pretty. And I have to admit, I'm happy with the product, and I am happy that we will be able to present games at their full resolution whenever the charity event happens next month. So I'm excited about that. Anyway, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit of a long one. If you have an EON GCHD and you want to talk about it, do so down below. If you are not an enthusiast and you think that $150 is crazy to go from 480i to 480p, you can talk about that as well. And if you have a Wii and you're like, I'm perfectly happy playing Melee on the Wii, it looks great, you can talk about that too. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, let's meet back tomorrow, shall we?